Hey, welcome back to our lessons from Isaiah. And in chapter 59, this section appears to be the children of Israel speaking to God, or perhaps maybe Isaiah speaking on their behalf. And they were confessing their sins after first doubting God's goodness because of their distress. But God hadn't changed, and that was what Isaiah was pointing out to them, that it was their sin that separated them from God, and their disobedience had brought misery and disillusionment to them, but God remained the same. God responded to their confession with forgiveness. Our failures as humans can never defeat God's purposes. He faithfully maintained his covenant with his people in spite of their rebellion and the things that went wrong. Chapter 60 focused on the future glory of Israel, when all the nations will come to bless Zion and glorify God. As God's people, we're to reflect the light of God that has been shown upon us. Israel was called to be his witness to all the nations, just as Jesus commanded his disciples to do the same. So in essence, because we all know about the Great Commission, right? As Christians, as they have received Jesus Christ, our mandate is to go and let others know about the good news. And as I read, I related that to, Israel being the light of God to all the nations. Some of the verses are prophecies of Jesus in chapter 61. Jesus read a part of verses 1 to 3 in the synagogue at Nazareth and interpreted it as reference to himself. And this was in Luke 4:16 to 21. Interesting read. Please do read it. Now, he read it to them as a fulfillment of the prophecy. They seemed to accept it at first, right? When Jesus read it, and they accepted it and they were excited about it, until he told them that the good news was not just for them, but also for the Gentiles, by recounting the stories or the miracles of Elijah and Elisha for the widow of Zarephath and Naaman the Syrian, letting them know that, the healing and the things that they were enjoying as Jews wasn't only for them, but also for the Gentiles. And this now angered them up to the point that they wanted to kill him. So, do you see how easy it is for us to accept, good news of blessings and, favor and good prophecies over ourselves? But when it comes to our God blessing our enemies or the people that we've condemned, it becomes a problem. Why should salvation be good enough for you and not just for anyone else? Selah. Now, saying this, I thought, this is just, but I judged myself too. And it's something that I said I need to be cognizant of, because we're always very quick to just write people off because we have judged them. But here we see that salvation is for everyone. The Lord promised to rejoice over his people as a bridegroom over his bride, and change their name to signify that they belong to him. In chapter 62, we see many statements by the Lord indicating that the negative will be rejected for the positive, especially through the marriage imagery reminiscent of the book of Hosea. Chapter 63 Isaiah saw a lone figure with red-stained garments coming from Edom. Now, Edom here represented God's enemies. And this vision was of God defeating his enemies in his own strength. It reminded me of the vision in Revelations 19:13 of Christ with his robe dipped in blood, treading the winepress of fierceness and wrath of God Almighty. I believe that passage spoke about judgment. Isaiah's prayer recounted the Lord's goodness to his people throughout history in spite of their rebellion, and formed the basis of his intercession for them. The people cried out to him for help, that is God, longing for him to reveal himself to them, and acknowledged him as the compassionate Father and everlasting Redeemer in their prayer for forgiveness. Now here's my hashtag getting to know God lesson. God is very, very benevolent. His goodness far outweighs his wrath. We've seen things written about the years of blessing. So we've seen the year of God's favor, the year of God's blessings, etc., etc. But then we always see the day of his wrath. We only see a reference of a day of his wrath. Now, we're not looking at it in context of time, but it shows obviously years and a day. So it's only for a moment, it's only for a time. As a God of justice, he must judge sin, but he's more about the love and the goodness than he is about the punishment. We must replace the picture we have of God as this angry God just waiting to smite sinners and to punish people. But we must see him as the benevolent God who wants to shower his love and his blessings on his people and draw us closer into relationship with him. So I have actually purposed in my mind for when anything bad, because prior to now, when anything bad happens, I just feel, oh, God is angry or God is not in it. But if I see God as good and submitting to his will, then I won't have these wrong thoughts anymore. I encourage you to do the same. Thank you for joining me. Tomorrow we'll be rounding up the book of Isaiah, and I'm excited. See you here.